Hello BookTube, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome to my channel, Book as in Books. In this video, I want to wrap up Reading Africa. Now, what is Reading Africa? It is one of the most fun things I did on BookTube. It is an initiative, project, activity thought by Mark from Book Time with Elvis. He did it first with the Euro last year, and he did it again for the Africa Cup of Nations that was held this January and February. So basically, it's a way to link literature and sports. The idea is that each booktuber who wants to participate is matched with one of the competing teams in the African Cup of Nations, and we read something, a book about that country. So it can be set in that country by an author from that country or about that country. Yeah, there really is no specific rule. It doesn't have to be a book. It could be a poem, a short story, a newspaper article, just something relating to that country. In the idea being that we will broaden our horizons. Now, of course, we don't stick with a single country for the entire tournament. The idea is that if your team wins, you have nothing left. You don't have to read anything else. But if your team loses, you have to read something about the country that beat your own team. So my team was Guinea. I was matched with Guinea. Guinea is quite a big country. It has a population of 12 million people, and it is on the west coast of Africa. It used to be part of the French Empire. It became independent from French in 1958. Most of the literature is in French for that reason. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that most of the population does speak French, because most of the population, I think, still speak local languages. I think the one that is the most spoken is Fula. So the book that I chose to read was The King of Sahel by Tierno Monenembo. I had never read anything by Mr. Monenembo or by any author from Guinea. Tierno Monenembo was born in Guinea in 1947, but unfortunately he had to flee the country in 1969 for political reasons. First, he fled to Senegal and then Ivory Coast, and he found his way to France. And in France, he studied and he became a doctor in biochemistry. And novel writing is a sideline, basically. He's mainly a teacher first and foremost. So this novel, it won the Renaudot Prize, which is quite a big prize in France. The biggest one is the Goncourt, and the second one pretty much is the Renaudot. So it's an important prize. And of course, this is a translation. I read the original in French. But it is quite interesting. It is a historical novel set in 19th century Guinea. I'm going to say Guinea, even though the country didn't exist at the time. Of course, at the time, at the end of the 19th century, it was still a race between the various European powers to get territory in Africa, to colonize the countries and to get access to natural resources and the riches of Africa. Our main character in this book is a real-life figure. His name was Aimé Olivier, Vicomte de Sanderval. Even if I wanted to translate that in English, I wouldn't be able to. This Viscount of Sanderval, which by the way was a Portuguese title, it was not a French title. He had a huge ego. He owned factories or businesses of some sort in France. I've already forgotten which ones. And he had the ambition of becoming king of something. And he thought that Africa would be a good place to become a king. So he made his way to the coast, the west coast of Africa, to what is today Guinea. And he traveled inland to negotiate with the kings of the country. That was Fouta Djallon, that's the region in the inland of Guinea. And he negotiated with them first to create trading posts, and then to have the right to build a railway. And eventually he was given territory and became king of a place called Sahel. So this is the story of this man. It is, of course, a novel, so it is not an accurate biography, but it is quite interesting, and it explains a little bit the history of Guinea and how the country of Guinea was created, because, of course, the background is this race to colonize Africa. So this Frenchman is acting independently but he also has to contend with the officials from France and the officials from Britain, and there's this whole political side to it too. So this is very interesting, and one of the most fun things that I did was that I Googled every place that was mentioned in this in the book. I Googled it for pictures, and Fouta Djallon is gorgeous. Just if you Google that, the images are beautiful. It looks like a gorgeous place. So that was my visit to Guinea. Now, in the first round of the Africa Cup of Nations, the games are not eliminatory. Depending on how you rank in the group, you may go to the next round or not. So the first game of Guinea was against Malawi. Guinea won, so I didn't have to read anything. The second game was against Senegal. They drew 0-0, so I didn't have to read anything. Now, the third game was against Zimbabwe. Normally, Guinea should have won that. Zimbabwe was already eliminated and Guinea was already qualified for the next round. But Guinea lost. So I had to read something about Zimbabwe. And I found a short story by a Zimbabwean author in this collection, African Short Stories. The author is, I'm going to look at my paper because the name is not one that I know very well. It's Dambuzo Marechera. Now, he was born in Zimbabwe in 1952, and he also left the country, though I don't know if it's for political reasons or not. Now, of course, in 1952, Zimbabwe was not called Zimbabwe, it was called Rhodesia, and it was as racist as South Africa. Marechera made his way to England. He studied at Oxford. And he came back to Zimbabwe after independence in 1982, and he died in 1987. According to something that I found, not all the articles say the same thing, but one of them said that he died from AIDS in 1987. And it also said that he had quite a difficult life, problems perhaps with substances and probably mental issues too. So he had quite a difficult life. And the story in this book is called Prostita. The problem with short stories or collection of short stories by various authors like this one is the lack of context. And I don't know in what year it was written, so I don't know exactly what it's about. It is about a man who was in exile. I don't know, it's not clear. It's a short story, so it often is short on details, and often the context tells more than the text itself. So this man is in exile. I don't know, I should have checked, I guess, whether it was written before the independence or after. So is it a case of colonial authorities turning against native people, or is it a case of post-colonial regimes already becoming dictatorial? Because Zimbabwe, of course, the first president of Zimbabwe was Mugabe, and he stayed in power from 1982 until his death only a few years ago. So we can guess that right from the beginning there were problems with local people too. So I don't know if I should have checked, I guess, but so I don't know if the criticism is about post-colonial government or pre-colonial or colonial government. The story is heavy also with symbolism, and I don't know much about African symbolism. So I guess a lot of things went way above my head in that short story, but I think it's good. So this author, Marechera, he, despite living only 35 years, left behind 2 novels, a few plays, and a few short stories. So I may read more by this author. So it played its role that I discovered an author that I think is interesting, even though I didn't understand everything. So after Zimbabwe, the next round was the elimination round. So that means that after that, if Guinea lost, it was eliminated. So the first team that Guinea had to face in the elimination round was Gambia. I think most people say the Gambia. I have no idea why. So Gambia is the smallest country on the African mainland. It is a little wedge of land inside Senegal in a way. It has a border with the Atlantic Ocean, but all the rest is surrounded by Senegal. And it's just really, it's teeny tiny. It's 50 kilometers wide. It is longer because it's along the Gambia River, but it's a teeny tiny place. And I thought, well, of course Guinea's going to win. No, Guinea lost. So I had to read something by or about Gambia. And what I found is this, one plastic bag, Isatu Sisai, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that, and the Recycling Women of the Gambia by Miranda Paul, and the illustrations are by Elizabeth Zunon. So this is a children's picture book that I found on Scribd. Now, of course, with reading Africa, the idea is that you will read whatever you need to read before the next game. So I didn't really have time to read an entire book before the next game. So I thought, okay, a children's picture book is going to be just fine. So this is based on a true story, and it is the story of this woman who one day was walking in the village and just couldn't help but notice all the dirty plastic bags that were discarded. And of course it was polluting the village, but also it was becoming dangerous because the goats were eating it. So she found a way to recycle them. And that is the story that is being told in this absolutely lovely picture book. So I do recommend this picture book. And then Gambia, the next game was against Cameroon. That's the host country. Now, Cameroon is a big country. It has a population of, let me look at my little piece of paper, a population of 25 million. It became independent from both France and the UK at different points, and then united to become a single country. So it gained independence from France in 1960 and from the UK in 1961. Now for that, I already had a book about Cameroon. It is this one. The title in English is The Innocent Anthropologist. It is by Nigel Barley. It is about an anthropologist who goes in a isolated place in northern Cameroon to study a village, the people of a village, I should say, who are neither Christians nor Muslims. They still live according to their ancestral traditions. And he went there as an anthropologist to study them. So I thought I would reread this, but then I remembered that there was a sequel to this book. And the sequel was available on Scribd. It is A Plague of Caterpillars, a Return to the African Bush. So this is the sequel to The Innocent Anthropologist. And it is just as much fun. However, you do have to start with The Innocent Anthropologist, because otherwise many things you will not understand in this book. The main thing being that Nigel Barley does not repeat what he learned of the Dowayo people, that is the people he studied. He does not repeat the customs of the Dowayo people. So in this book, the main focus is the ceremony of circumcision. The Dowayo people have a particular ceremony of circumcision, and it's different from traditional circumcision. That is, they don't remove just the foreskin, they peel the entire length of the penis. I can only imagine. And of course, they do that, not to babies, they do that to young boys. It's not done every year, so not everyone is the same age when it happens. So they are between, I would say, 14, 15, and perhaps 20 years old when it happens. And there's an entire ceremony that goes with it. It takes months to prepare, before and after, and it's very long. And it doesn't happen every year. So Nigel Barley, who after his first trip to Dowayo land had gone back to the UK, had heard through the branches that the famous ceremony was about to happen, and he wanted to document it. So he went back to Dowayo land to try to document the ceremony. So a lot of funny things happen in this book too, but as I said, you have to read the previous one, otherwise you won't understand it. But it's really hilarious. I recommend it a lot. So Cameroon played Egypt, and Cameroon lost. So I had to read something by an Egyptian author. Now Egypt, I don't know how to say that. It is a strong place for literature. It has a very long history. You may start with something like the Book of the Dead that was written a few thousand of years ago, or you can go with something much more recent. And I went with something much more recent. Someone in the chat mentioned a woman at point zero. I think it was Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot, and it was supported by a Roz from Scally Dandling about the books. And I looked for that book. It sounded interesting and short, so I could read it before the next game. However, I could not find it at my usual places where I find books. It was not at the library, it was not in the bookstores. I could have ordered it, but it wouldn't have arrived in time for the game. And it wasn't on Scribd. However, on Scribd, there was another book by the same author, or, well, there was more than one, but I chose one. The author is Nawal El-Saadawi, and I read Memoirs of a Woman Doctor. It was quite short. It was about 83 pages. Now, even though the title says memoirs, it is not a memoir. It is really a novel, and the author mentions it specifically, explicitly at the beginning of the book. It is not a non-fiction, it is a work of fiction. Some bits I liked a lot, some bits a bit less. What I liked a bit less was the style of writing. It was a bit basic, I guess. I don't know, there was something that was not ringing very well with me. And it's a first novel also, so there might be little weaknesses here and there. And the other thing is that she had to deal with censorship because she was writing about a woman being free in a way, a woman resisting traditional patriarchy, a woman who decided that her job in life would not be to serve a husband. It is a feminist novel without any shadow of a doubt, and I suppose it must have been somewhat shocking when it was published in the 1950s. I should have said that, it was published in the 1950s originally. One thing that I thought was very cleverly done, so I don't know if it was deliberate or if it was just natural way of doing things, is that the author chooses never to show directly the confrontation between her main character, a woman, and men in authority. So at the beginning of the book, we see the girl who is growing up, and she's very strong-willed and independent, and she is resisting her mother. And there is a confrontation with her mother yells, the mother slaps her, the mother cries, and the girl wins. And we see that. The next chapter, she's in medical school. So we don't see the scene that probably happened with her father. We have to guess that there was an argument of some sort, that it didn't go naturally that a girl should go to medical school. So that was completely obviated. It was just taken out. I don't know if it was I don't know if it was just taken out. I shouldn't say that because it probably was never written anyway. It's just not included. It's just not mentioned. We just pretend it never happened. Next chapter. And then at another point, there's another man who is in authority, who is telling the main character, do this, do that. And it is in direct dialogue. But the narrator does not answer in direct dialogue. It's a bit like if you were going to see a play and you had two people on stage. There was the male character speaking to the female character, saying, do this, do that. And the female character, instead of answering the male character, just turned towards the crowd and said, I will not do that. But saying it to the crowd and not to the character on stage. So it's a bit what happens here. Instead of resisting directly and saying to the man, no, we go back, the narration goes back to internal monologue. The narrator says, oh, I knew I could not do that. I knew I could not obey. And the next thing we know, the situation is over and she's elsewhere in her life. She has moved on. So I thought it was a very clever way of shifting the focus of the story, not to say that it is a story of rebellion. It is not a story of standing up to men, but it's really a story of affirmation. It's a woman who makes her own path. And she does not deliberately go against men. It's just that she makes her own path, and that's it. So I thought that was a very interesting aspect. Now, in the final, Egypt faced Senegal, and Egypt lost. So I had to read something by a Senegalese author or about Senegal. Now, for that, I had already a book on my TBR. It is Murambi, The Book of Bones by author Boubacar Boris Diop. Now, this is not the same Diop who won the Booker International last year. That was David Diop. Boubacar Boris Diop, he is a journalist. And the story is not about Senegal. This story is about Rwanda. The reason why Diop chose to write a story about the genocide in Rwanda is simply that he was invited to do so. In 1998, a number of authors from Africa were invited to Rwanda to talk to survivors of the genocide, to visit places where the genocide happened, and basically to inform themselves about the genocide. And they were invited to write about it in somehow the duty of memory, so to make sure that the events would not be forgotten, to make sure that the events would not be narrated strictly from European point of views or North American point of views, to make sure that Africans would keep a record, an African record of what happened, and that it would be included in African literature. So this is what happened. And of course, this is not an easy subject. It is a very difficult read, but it is a wonderful read. I recommend it to everyone. It's one of the best books I've read this year so far. I think it's well balanced because it could easily become very grisly, very grim, and very depressing. And the way Diop goes around that is that he multiplies the narrators and he tells the story in two timelines. So there's the timeline of before and during the genocide, and there's a timeline of 4 years later. And that is a way of relieving the tension, because the timeline of before and during the massacres, these chapters are hard to read. They are very difficult. It's not graphic. There are some difficult scenes, but it's not just gore for the sake of writing horrors. It's there's a good balance, I should say. It's hard to find the words to describe that, but I thought it was very well done. So it's a hard read, but it's readable. It is not unreadable because it's too difficult and we cannot look at the page. It's super well done. It's really, I can recommend it very highly. Oh, and by the way, I'm not the only one who recommends it. On the back, there's a little blurb in here, and that is by Toni Morrison. So, whoops, I'm not showing it to you. Yeah, Toni Morrison. So, yeah, if Toni Morrison said that it's a must-read, it is a must-read. So that was the end of my African reading, and it was just so much fun. We had a Voxer group and we watched the matches together and commented on who won and who lost and made reading suggestions. And it was just the most fun thing, one of the most fun things I did on BookTube. It was really, really a lot of fun. So I would like to thank Mark for organizing this. It's just a wonderful, super idea. And the consequence is that I read books that I didn't think I would read. I had not planned on reading something by Nawal El-Saadawi. I had not planned on reading something by Tierno Monenembo, but I did. So I discovered new authors and I discovered new types of literature, and I read a picture book, and it was just wonderful on the whole. So that was my experience with reading Africa. And I hope we'll do it again for the World Cup in November. So that is it for me. Thank you everyone for watching. I will see you in the next video. À la prochaine.